One is starting from biochemistry, we have two speakers, Kumar Mangalam, and the second one is Rahul Vardhan. For physiology, we have Shaurya Anand and Kshitij Desai, and for anatomy, we have Shagufta Naaz and Naman Bhaskar. All these people are from 2022 batch, which means they have a lot of expertise in dealing with the first three subjects recently. Um, Starting with biochemistry, I'll share my screen and give you the list of speakers first, and then we'll begin with Kumar Mangalam if he's ready. Mangalam, are you ready?
Yes, boss. I'm ready.
So I'll just mute myself and turn my video off, and you carry on from here.
Boss PPT. बॉस पीपीटी आप शेयर कर रहे हो ओके या ओके
Is my screen being shared?
यस बॉस हो
Okay,
रहा
so if it's okay, I'll just switch to the PPT and then you can carry on. It's fine.
है यस बॉस हो रहा है
Okay, I'll just mute myself.
Okay, so I'm starting. I hope I'm audible to everyone. So yeah, good evening everyone. I am Kumar Mangalam, a second year MBBS student from AIIMS Patna. So this is a guide webinar for the first year students about how to write in the first year's professional exam and the university exam. We already had a webinar initially where we discussed how to study biochemistry. This webinar strictly focuses on how to write the answers for the particular chapter because I feel you should know how to write the answers in the exam so as to get the maximum marks. We all know the information, but how to present the information is what that matters. So, what should be the technique or how you should ideally write any exams, be it in biochemistry? So that is what I'm going to discuss over here. So let's get started. First of all, which books to use? I'll just randomly go through this. We all obviously know which all books you have studied because you've already studied so far. What I would suggest for the last 1 or 2 months, whatever is left, what you should do ideally is to go through the Maro notes or the Rajesh Hambulkar notes, whatsoever is available, or your own notes if you have prepared so far. See, for the 1 or 2 months, it's very difficult to study the books like Harper and Lippincott. So I would strictly say that if you have not studied these books initially, do not go back to these books because these are very thick books and they are difficult to remember and memorize because only 2 months are left for your university exams. For Vasudevan or Satyanarayan, these are good books. If you have studied initially, it's ideally recommended. Agar time nahi hai, if you do not have the time to go through the textbooks because only 2 months are left and you want to revise a lot of things in a short duration, I would strictly recommend to use Rajesh Hambulkar notes because that is what I use for my university exams and I scored pretty good marks in that. Even Mano notes are good for that matter. See what happens in these notes now. Everything is organized in a well-oriented manner. All the answers are organized in bullet points. So it's easier for you to memorize. It's easier for you to revise. Biochemistry is a chapter. Everyone starts to forget biochemistry. They are like there are various enzymes, various reactions, various rate limiting steps in biochemistry. So the more and more you revise biochemistry, the more and more better you become to it. And for that revision, it's difficult to revise from the textbooks. So if you have made your own notes, that is ideally preferred. If you haven't made for the remaining 2 months or so, use the Maro notes or Rajesh Jambulkar notes. I personally feel Rajesh Jambulkar notes is better than Maro notes. It's upon your discretion what you should follow. Both of them are equally good. So this is what the resources you have to use for the remaining days. Okay, so the division of biochemistry as a whole. So you all must obviously know what are the components of biochemistry. One is the general biochemistry. Then next we have the metabolism, the most important part and the most weighted topic of biochemistry. Then we have the genetics, and then we have the smaller topics like vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, xenobiotics, organ function test, KFT, LFT, TFT, and cancer. One thing to note that these smaller topics, though people consider them to be a smaller chunk, but they are very scoring. Like it requires minimum effort and maximum output can be gained. So I would strictly tell you to do read these smaller topics because the more you read, the better it becomes. And these smaller topics have good weightage, right? So suppose you take 8 hours to complete genetics and you can take 5 hours to complete these smaller topics. It's ideally preferred to do these smaller topics because more number of questions will be asked from these smaller topics. So that is what you have to do. What's next? Okay, so general biochemistry. These are the important topics, the most frequently asked question in general biochemistry. So just go through this. We have enzymes, classification, hemoglobin, most important. Hemoglobin and jaundice, these are very important topics, not even in biochemistry, but even for a medicine. So it's better that you study these topics very thoroughly. And hemoglobin and myoglobin, that is also done. That is also very important. So first of all, classification of carbohydrates. Suppose if an examiner asks right about the classification of carbohydrates, how you should ideally go. First of all, whatever be the topic, you always have to write the introduction part of the chapter. If you have asked to write about carbohydrates, first of all, what will you do? You'll start by describing or defining what a carbohydrate is. Then you write the answer. Instead of writing it into a paragraph format, you have to write it in a tabulated format or in a flowchart. See, biochemistry is a topic where the flowcharts and the tabulated format is preferred over paragraphs. Like you have to be very thorough with it. Diagrams, flowcharts, and the tabulated format is the one which fetch you more marks than writing a paragraph. The more difficult you make for the examiner to check your answer, the more difficult it is for the examiner to give you marks. So why to harden the work of the examiner? Simply write it in the flowchart format. Short and crisp answers are preferred in biochemistry because no one is ready to read your long answers. No one has the time to read those long answers. Plus, a good handwriting would obviously have a better impact as compared to the one who have a thorough bad handwriting. So I would like tell you to just focus on that also. So yeah, that is how you have to write the answers for classification. What's next? Now, this is what metabolism is. These are the important topics for metabolism. We have carb metabolism, lipid, and then we have the protein metabolism. These are the important topics. The PPT would be shared in your group. So these are the must-to-do topics. You cannot skip any of these topics. And just let me brief you how to write an answer. Suppose an answer comes right about cholesterol metabolism, which came in our professional exams in AIIMS. So how do you approach? सबसे पहले you have to write about introduction. So if a question asks like 5 marks ka the question comes, write about the cholesterol metabolism. How will you write? How will you approach? First of all, you will write about the cholesterol, about the molecule. If you know about a structure, it's well and good. How many carbons it is made up of. So you start by writing the introduction about cholesterol, about how is it made. Then you go and jump to write the reactions of cholesterol metabolism. Directly, do not jump into the reaction without giving any introduction. It's very important for you to give the introduction and then to give the introduction. So you start with the cholesterol metabolism. You write up, define cholesterol, write a short introductory paragraph about the cholesterol metabolism. Then you go and move and write about the reaction. Now, for any reaction, it's very important to write the rate limiting step and the rate limiting enzyme. Like if you do not write these two things, now the answer is said to be incomplete or the teacher examiner won't even check your answer. So rate limiting reaction and rate limiting step. These are very, very important and you have to write that and you must know that. So and yeah, that is how you write. And one more thing, at the end of each answer, it's ideally recommended to add a clinical note. Suppose you have the question for cholesterol metabolism. So as a clinical note, you may write about the statin groups of drugs. Like how does the statin groups of drugs act? See, in biochemistry, it's not like physiology. The more you write, the more you get marks. But the more valuable thing you write, the better you gain marks. So if you add a clinical note after every answer, that fetches you more marks because the teacher assumes that you have put in an extra effort, like you have read the books, you have put in the effort to reach that extra extent. So this is what differentiates a person who is getting pass marks and a one who is getting a distinction marks. These smaller topics, like if you add a clinical note after your answer, that will fetch you more marks. So that is what you have to remember. What should be the approach to biochemistry? Step one, रटो नहीं समझो. Biochemistry is a chapter that's very volatile. You study today, you forget tomorrow. The reactions, the metabolism, the pathways, the enzyme, the diseases, they are very confusing. So the more you revise, the better you become. What I used to follow as my strategy, I used to watch the video lecture from Rajesh Jambulkar. I used to understand the metabolism, the pathway of the metabolism. Then I used to read his notes. I also used to study Vasudevan. That's a good book. But Rajesh Ambulkar notes are easier to reproduce in exam. Like it's better if you read books. Ideally, it is preferred. But for the exam preparation strategy, it's better if you read Rajesh Ambulkar's notes because it's easier to reproduce. Right? Come minutes mein you can actually write a very good answer. So that is what is expected from you. So after reading a particular topic, I read about the paragraphs and then I again revise it. And for each reaction, it's very important to know the inhibitors and the diseases associated with that pathway, which I will be discussing in the next slide. This is a very important slide. Whenever a pathway is given, you have to know about the enzyme of the pathway, the inhibitors of the pathway, the deficiency diseases associated with the pathway, and the energetics of the pathway. Suppose there's a question about ketogenesis, and if I do not write about the energetic which is being used, the answer will be half complete. If there is a question about beta oxidation of fatty acids. Suppose there's a 10 marker question about beta oxidation of fatty acids. So, what is ideally expected? You write about the pathway, you write about the enzymes which are being involved, and also add a note on the energetics which are involved in that particular reaction. Similarly, if a particular disease is being asked, suppose alkaptonuria is a disease, and a 5 marker question SAQ arrives, write about alkaptonuria. So, how do you start? First of all, you write about the biochemical defect. What is the enzyme which is being defective in that particular disease, and the reaction which is being associated with it. Then, then second point, you write the clinical manifestation. What are the clinical manifestation which you will be seeing in the patient suffering from alkaptonuria? Then what you do? Then you write for the reasons of those clinical manifestation, like why are there black spots? Why is there back pain in person suffering from alkaptonuria? Because ochronosin such deposits in the bone. So that all you have to write. Then you have to write the diagnosis. How will you diagnose the patient? It's very simple. For the biochemistry, most of the diseases, like if the enzyme deficiency is there, you can write for diagnosis, like you can do the enzyme assay and then you can diagnose. And then you write the treatment for that particular scene. Agar L-captonuria ka deficiency hoga, then you write the treatment to supplement with L-captonuria. The fourth and fifth point may appear to be vague, but if you write in the exam paper, the examiner will appreciate it, because this is the ideal path. This is the ideally how you should write an answer. So if there's a 5 marker question and you write your answer in these 5 subheadings, you're definitely going to get 4 or 4.5 marks, definitely. Rather, if you write about alkaptonuria in a paragraph, the examiner might not read the paragraph and might not give the marks. So that is how you should write an answer in a biochemistry paper. Genetics. Genetics is a topic which many people say that they fear because they don't understand, because the language it is written in the books, it's very confusing. So for genetics, what I did, I again saw Rajesh Ambulkar's video. Trust me, it's very beautifully explained by him. All the important pathways, transcription, translation, very beautifully it's been explained. So you can grab the concept from there and then you can read his notes. They're very well written. Again, these are important topics. Topics like translation is an important LAQ for a 10 marker question in your university exam, and even gene regulation is an important 10 marker question. And the differences between gene regulation of prokaryotic and eukaryotic, these are the important topics which you cannot forget. So these are the important topics which you have to do for genetics, must to do topics, and it won't happen if you don't do. Similarly, same strategy you have to follow for any of the questions asked of genetics. You have to first define those topics, terminologies, and then you have to divide your answers into subgroups and then write it. An important time management skill in biochemistry, you should not write like about 15 minutes for an LAQ. That's ideally what is preferred. So you should ideally segregate your time for each answer once you get the biochemistry paper, so that you can give an ample amount of time for each question and not waste a time for a particular question. So this is what you have expected for biochemistry. I hope the exam preparation tip is very clear. You first revise, you first make your concept very clear. You have to memorize about the reaction, the enzyme, the pathway. If it's a disease, you have to know which enzyme, which pathway is there, what are the clinical manifestation of the diseases, and you have to write everything in subpoints. You do not write a paragraph. You make flowcharts for biochemistry. You have to write everything in subheadings and then present your paper. If you can make drawings, it's appreciated, though I would not draw it. But yeah, drawings and flowcharts are the one which is going to fetch you more marks than writing in simple paragraphs. So that is what I was supposed to offer to you. I hope I have made my point very clear. So at the end, the chapter you are studying today is going to save someone's life tomorrow. So pay attention and keep hustling. I hope you have understood how to write the answer for biochemistry. So all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mangalam, for explaining biochemistry in such detail. Now, for completing the rest of the parts, we have the second speaker for biochemistry, Rahul Vardhan. Rahul, are you here?
जी हाँ हेलो बॉस
Yeah, so I think I would stop sharing my screen and you can continue from here.
Okay, okay. Okay. So hello everyone. I am Rahul from PMCH Patna 2022 batch. Welcome to today's session on the topic how to write answer in university examination. I am here to guide you about biochemistry. See, biochemistry is very interesting subject and it is also a very volatile subject. I know the syllabus of first year is very vast. You guys just got admitted in medical college, so everyone wants to enjoy and live a college life. So all of you can't get much attention to biochemistry because you have to study the subjects like anatomy and physiology. Those are very vast. But I will recommend everyone to please study biochemistry because you will not get time later to study it properly. So you should study biochemistry. Okay. Here are some books which I recommend. Suppose this is the last stage of your first year. So I can't say that you should start Harper and Lippincott from now. But here are some books so you can study. Some standard textbooks like Harper and Lippincott. And two are Indian famous Indian authors like Vasudevan and Satyanarayan. See about Harper. Harper is very standard textbook. It is very vast and extensive and hard to study. You can't start study it and start it now. But second one is Lippincott. Lippincott, I personally prefer Lippincott because it is my favorite. I have studied it very well. But some topics in Lippincott are skipped, like hormones are not given. But some are very vastly explained, like cytochrome. Okay, so Lippincott is also very easy to understand and easy to study. So you must read it. And the others are Indian authors like Vasudevan and Satyanarayan. Vasudevan contains all the topics and it is also a very good book. But Satyanarayan, it is also a good book and it is mainly preferred for examination. You can easily revise Satyanarayan during examination time. But data like blood glucose level and other data are not given appropriately in Satyanarayan. But and I personally advise all of you to please make self-made notes and mark the important topics because you can't revise the whole textbook during the examination time. Suppose in during my times we didn't get a gap between the two papers of biochemistry. So it is very difficult to revise the whole textbook during examination time. So you must make notes. Okay. Here the most preferred notes in every medical college is Dr. Rajesh Jambulkar notes. Okay, it is you can say that lifesaver at the examination time. Everyone study it during the examination because you can't revise whole textbook. So it is very important to study Jambulkar notes during the examination time, and you will also get a good mark. Okay, but I personally say don't solely depend upon it because it kills your concept. Okay, and here are few online teachers which are preferred like Dr. Rebecca James from Meru. Rebecca James is very fine teacher. Her notes are extensive and you you can easily understand her teaching. Okay. Few other teachers like Smiley Pruthi and Sangumna Priya from Tape Letter. See, from Tape Letter you will get concise and crisp content. And the other teacher is Jambulkar. What my friend Mangalam says, Jambulkar, he is also a good teacher and his notes is very best for the examination purposes, university examination purpose. Okay, and you see, biochemistry is very volatile subject, so you have to study the and revise it regularly. Otherwise, you will forget everything what you have studied. Okay, so now we have some change in pattern of examination. Earlier, before 2019, we have other pattern, and after 2019, that was called NMC batch. We have other pattern. Before 2019, there were total marks of 50, and two papers were conducted for biochemistry. But after 2019, 100 total marks of 100 and two papers is conducted for biochemistry. Okay, so I am a student of Aryabhatta Knowledge University, so I am mainly talking about it. Earlier, there 5 to 10 1 marks type questions are asked, and 6 to 7 essay types are asked, and total consists 50 marks for each paper. But now around 20 essay type questions are asked, including long answer, short answer question, and give reason answer type question, and 10 marks of MCQ are asked. So time management and space management is very important here. Okay, here two papers of biochemistry are conducted. In paper one, we learn mostly about metabolism, vitamins, minerals, and in paper two, we learn mostly about chemistry. Okay, but some topics are common, like in paper 1 and paper 2, radioactive isotopes, immunity, other topics like LFT, KFT, autoimmune disorder, inborn error of metabolism. These are common topics, acid base. These are asked both in paper 1 and paper 2. See about immunity. Immunity is very important. I personally suggest that you should study it very deeply because it is asked both in paper 1 of biochemistry, paper 2 of biochemistry, and it is also asked in physiology, and you will also study immunity in second year and other years. Okay, so it is very important to study it deeply. Okay, and this is the syllabus of paper 2. Mostly chemistry of carbohydrate, lipid, and protein consists paper 2. Okay, then what are the patterns of answer writing? How can you score good marks? So your answer should be in point wise, in flow chart. In biochemistry, you must make flow chart of every metabolism. You must study it very properly. You must memorize it. Okay. Otherwise, you will not get good marks. You should not write this in paragraph form. Okay. Otherwise, examiner will get irritated and gives you a less mark. Okay. You must write keyword and use medical terminology like pyrexia and other things. Suppose a question was asked on tyrosine metabolism. So you must write about the disorder of tyrosine metabolism like alpha-urea and other things. Okay. You must draw diagram and give a factual answer. Please don't make a story too much. Okay. You must write what the question asks. Give a factual answer. It is very good to score. Don't make your handwriting should be very good, not good. So it must be legible. Okay. You must solve all the questions properly and serial wise. Suppose you have written the answer of question number 2 and question number 3. So you must make the answer in serial wise, like question number 4 and 5 onwards. You should not write question number 1 and then question number 10. Okay. Otherwise, examiner will get irritated and it will not be a good impression. Okay. Write the answer as per demand, what the question is asking. Suppose later I will show you how to write the answer on urea cycle in both short answer question and long answer question. Okay. And remember one important thing, you will not get extra seat. Okay. So you have to make a proper adjustment. How much space should given to any question. So you can write it properly. And best advice is that do MCQ on first page itself. Okay, you must write MCQ on first page so you will get a good impression. Okay, suppose this is urea answer on urea cycle, a short note on urea cycle, and other I have written a long note on urea cycle. Question is same, just the form of question is changed. Okay, in short note, you can say how I have written that urea, other name of urea cycle, its site, and where it occurs, how much reaction occurs, and a diagram, and energetics and regulation. And I have written the urea cycle disorder in very short form. Okay, but in long note, I have explained each step in very detailed way, like how CPS formation occurs, CPS synthesis कैसे होता है. I have written ruling for every step को मैंने डिटेल से बताया है. और वैसे ही मैंने इसमें ट्रीटमेंट I have written the treatment and fate of urea as well. Okay. एंड एनर्जेटिक्स रेगुलेशन के अलावा मैंने डिजीज को CPS1 डिफेक्ट, हाउ हाइपर अमोनिया अकर्ड, ये सब अच्छे से एक्सप्लेन किया गया है. तो वाई बेंजोएट एंड फिनाइल एसीटेट इज गिवन. सो ये सब लॉन्ग आंसर में लिखना है, बट इन शॉर्ट आंसर आई हैव रिटन briefly about everything. Okay. The most important thing is time management. Everyone goes to exam and start very slowly, and at last question छूट जाता है. But you have to make speed from the starting only. Okay. You must give 6 to 7 minutes for a essay type question. For long answer, 20 minutes is important. सही है, sufficient है. For region type, in AKU we get region type question. So you have to write region type not in. You can write in half page region type questions and give 4 to 5 minutes each. You must do MCQ properly, because in long answer question type in Bihar, how better answer you have given in long answer or in short answer, out of 10 you can't get more than 8 marks. But in MCQ type you can get 100% marks if you have written all the MCQ correctly. So you have to give a special emphasis in MCQ also. Okay. And in AKU we get OMR on first page, so you must fill OMR and personal details, otherwise your copy will not be checked and result pending हो जाएगा. And see what to study and what to not study to get good marks. First of all, cover all the topics, especially the clinical one. Okay, and go through the metabolism deeply. और आपको टेबुलर फॉर्म में पॉइंट वाइज लिखना है डायग्राम के साथ और पीवाईक्यू को सॉल्व करिए और बार बार रिवाइज कीजिए यू हैव टू रिवाइज इट थोरोली because how much you revise better you will get concept and better you will write the answer. Okay, because biochemistry is very volatile subject. But if you have आपने अच्छे से नहीं पढ़ा है पहले से, you have not studied earlier very good, but examination is near, you have to pass it. So what you do is study Jambulkar notes or Marrow notes and do previous year question in retrograde manner. Suppose you are 23 batch, तो ऐसा नहीं कि 2012 बैच से आपको स्टार्ट करना है. You have to solve the PYQ first of all 2022 batch, then 21 batch, then 20 batch. So ऐसे retrograde manner में जाना है और revise all the questions and Jambulkar notes and other notes thoroughly, so you can remember it or do MCQ correctly because it will give you 100% mark in MCQ. Okay, here are few important topics what you have to study in molecular. The PPT will be shared and you will get a PDF of this. So in molecular biology, you have to study what topics like protein biosynthesis, DNA replication. So in protein metabolism, the short note and metabolism of tyrosine, या कोई भी metabolism का question आ रहा है, so you have to give the answer in disorder also. What is the disorder of tyrosine? You have to give what is alkaptonuria. So you have to give it answer in tabular form. That which enzyme defect called alkaptonuria. So it will give a better impression on the examiner. Okay. Here are the questions. Important topic you will get in PPT in group. Okay, it will be shared later. You can see. Suppose in vitamin you have to remember the RDA value. Okay. And enzyme it is, these are the some important topics you will get later. Okay. And last, it is a slope of Gita that कर्मण्यवाधिकारस्य मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफल हेतु भ्रूम ते संगोत्स्व कर्मणि. Like you have the right to perform your actions only. You are not entitled to the fruit of the action. अगर आपने अपना एक्शन किया है, अपना कर्म किया, तो आपको फ्रूट उसका मिलेगा ही, वो किसी और को नहीं मिलेगा. Thanks all of you, and special thanks to quiz winning team to give me opportunity to present it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Shaurya Anand. Shaurya, are you ready? Okay, so
Yeah, Mangalam, I'm ready.
I'll present the PPT.
So, hi everyone. Before Mangalam presents his PPT, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Shaurya Anand, and I'm a second year MBBS student at IGIMS Patna. Uh, so, today I will be dealing with physiology and mainly the answer writing part, which will be further clarified by Kshitij, who is the batchmate at IGIMS Patna. So, हाँ, तो सबसे first of all, what I like to clear with you guys is like I'm not a very bad student. I was never a very bad student who studies throughout the year. So I will be dealing on how to practice answer writing in a very short period of time. Like many of Mangal, can you skip to next page? Mangalam, am I audible?
Shaurya.
Can you skip to the next page?
Okay.
So these advices are not meant for these students. First, who are still confused about MBBS. Second, who are the extraordinary ones, and third, who are the Padaku students who have studied throughout the year. As I was never one of them, I am just an ordinary student who have the skill to pass any exam for first year in a night. So, Mangalam, next page. Who can use these suggestions? So those students who have great attendance in the senior junior interaction sessions and very less attendance in class, who have not attended classes very attentively, who have enjoyed the first year to its fullest. So let's start with the main topic. Yes. So why focus on answer writing? As I said, these my advices are meant for those students who are just going to start their preparation now. So in a very short period of time, they have to cover a lot of syllabus. Like other students who were studying throughout the year, they had one full year to cover their syllabus. But the students who will be starting from now, they don't have more than 1 month to cover all of their syllabus. So why focus on answer writing? Because answer writing is an art which can which can give you more marks which you are supposed to get. Like if there is a student who knows everything, but if he has framed his answer in a wrong way, he'll get 7 out of 10. And if there is a student who has very limited knowledge and he has framed an answer in a very good way, then he'll get more marks. So with less knowledge, you can get more marks, and it saves time in exam hall. Yes. So what are the two techniques to score maximum marks in physiology? And I'm not elaborating much part of it because further it will be explained by Kshitij. So the first technique, which is diagrams. So as you can see, the page, it has 5 or 6 points, but the page is fully covered. The slide in front of you is fully covered. It's because of the diagram. A diagram occupies a one full page. It saves you time because writing text in that one page um, will take much time, but a diagram won't take much time. And the examiner noticed diagram at first glance. He is happy that you have enough knowledge, and he'll give you enough marks because a diagram never examiner never goes through all of your answer. He just goes through important points, the diagrams, the flowcharts, and gives you mark. So the first impression of your knowledge is through a diagram. So mistakes in your answer are neglected. Like if the examiner has seen that you have made the right diagram, you have made the right flowchart, then most probably he is not going to go through your detailed answer, and the mistakes that you may have committed in your answers will be neglected by the examiner. And any diagram related to the question will fetch good marks. Like for example, if there is a question that explain everything about that mango tree, you just tie a goat around the mango tree and explain everything about the goat. It's just anything related to that question. You can draw anything related to the question. If the question on lung compliance, then you can draw the expansion and contraction of lungs and the muscles involved. Like just that's it. The next second technique is flowcharts. Yeah. So coming to flowcharts, flowchart is much more similar to a diagram, but it is more easier. It occupies more than one page as there are arrows and there are short points, and it saves a lot of time. And it is easy for the examiner to go through a flowchart as it is easy for you to learn the flowchart too. So it increases the bulk of answer as what you have framed exactly in flowchart. You can frame the exact same thing in your text answer. It will the main points will be the points which are explained in the flowchart, and you can explain them in 3 4 points. And physiology is mainly all about flowchart. Try to add a flowchart to every single question possible. Whether a flowchart occupies half page, whether a flowchart occupies 2 pages. And next, coming to the text part, the writing part. Yeah. So don't waste your time in writing long paragraphs, even on those answers which you know very well. Because basically the long answer questions, which are your first questions in your question paper, everyone knows those questions very well because they are from the very common topics. And we start writing, and we give half an hour to one long question, 40 minutes to another long question. The examiner is never going to check your 7 8 page answer on a long question. Just don't write beyond 2 to 3 pages, even in long answer question. And the answer you are writing should have an introductory part, should have a body part, should have a conclusion if needed, and should have a clinical part as well. And all of these parts should be covered with 3 or 4 points. The points should be covered in 3 to 4 lines, and the points should be short, crisp, concise, yet informative. Don't try to write essays on any topic which you know, and you can highlight or underline any important word. What it does, like the examiner goes through the highlighted part or the underlined part only, and the rest of the part is neglected. So again, he'll not examine notice your mistakes, and your handwriting should be clean. And I'm not telling that your handwriting should be as clean as a calligraphist, but your handwriting should be clean. The words should be well spaced, and you should leave spaces before starting an answer and after ending an answer, so that you can add something in the last moment. If you have time after a question paper, you can add something in the last moment. And coming to the next part, uh, yes, about the question answer. Generally, the question paper has 3 types of question: long answer question, short answer question, or explain the question, and then explain why question, along with MCQ. So the long answer questions are generally 2 in number. They carry 10 to 15 marks, and they take 20 minutes. The time which should be given to a long answer should be 20 minutes. And what should we add in the answer for a long question is 1 to 2 diagrams, which will take 1 page or 2 page, one flowchart, which should cover 1 to 1.5 pages, and the text part should go 1.5 to 2 pages. In the overall, it will cover 5 pages in a very short period of time. And coming to short answer questions, so then generally short answer questions, at least in my university, are 8 to 10 in number in a question paper. They carry 5 to 8 marks, varying on the universities and colleges. And the time which should be devoted to a single short answer is 6 to 8 minutes. And in short answer, diagram can be added or not added based on what the question asks. But the flowchart is a must. The flowchart should cover 1 to 1.5 pages, and again the text should cover 1 to 1.5 pages. Now, coming to the explain why questions, generally these questions are 4 to 5 in number and they carry 2 to 4 marks each. The time which should be devoted to these questions is 3 to 5 minutes. Diagram is not necessary in these questions, but flowchart is necessary. You should add a flowchart which should cover half to one page, and the text which should cover half to one page. Also, I'd like to mention most of the universities or colleges give MCQ as the last question. Like after a long answer question, short answer question, explain why question, and MCQ question. So what I'll suggest is just practice answer writing so well that you know that how much space this question should carry. Like if I am seeing a long answer question which I don't know very well, I will just leave 5 or 6 pages for that long answer question. I will skip to next part so that in the limited time frame I reach to my MCQs, because MCQs take very less time, like per MCQ 30 seconds if you don't know very well. MCQs will take very less time and you will fetch much more marks than you will do in these questions. Because even if you have written a long answer question very well, which is of 10 marks, you will not get much any more than 8 marks. So what should be ideal long answer? It's in the next slide. Yeah. So this is the ideal long answer, and this is not the ideal long answer for those Parhago students which I mentioned earlier. Suppose the question is events during neuromuscular transmission, and I know this in a very short, concise way, not in a very informative way, as I have short-term knowledge. So what I would do is first I would do a diagram which is related to neuromuscular transmission. That is normal neuromuscular junction. It will occupy one page. Then at the next page, I will draw diagram related to the question, events at neuromuscular junction, and see just with this the second diagram, events at neuromuscular junction, how I am going to frame the whole of the answer. Coming to the next page, like we have till now we have occupied 2 pages. First showing the normal neuromuscular junction, and the second showing the events at neuromuscular junction, and the diagram which showed us the event during normal neuromuscular transmission. Yeah, the second diagram. I am going to frame this diagram into this flowchart. It's the same flowchart, the diagram and flowchart are same, but this flowchart is going to cover one more page, and see how I have added this. It's the body of the your text answer which you are going to write. You have to start with an introduction. What is neuromuscular transmission? You will write everything. Then you will write the body of the question. This is the body of the question. See how it is well framed in the form of short, crisp, concise, yet informative points. Every point has clear information, and the point is not too lengthy, which will occupy much time. Then it should have a conclusion. If the question is asked in explain why form, it should have a conclusion and a clinical. What are the clinicals for events during neuromuscular junction? What are the agents blocking neuromuscular transmission? These things. Now coming to what is the ideal short answer? Yeah. So suppose the question is excitation, contraction, complaint. What I'll do is I'll just draw this diagram and I'll show you from where this diagram is. I'll draw this diagram. This will occupy one page. And this diagram is not necessary here because this diagram is not mentioned in most of the books in this simple way. But what I'll do is I'll ensure that I have made a clear flow chart. This flow chart can occupy 1 to 1.5 pages if made in a clear way. I will ensure that the flow chart is a must in the short answer question, but diagram is optional. Now, and I will describe this flowchart in the text part, so it will cover 3 to 4 pages, and you will get good 7 out of 10 marks. Now, yeah. So now I have not added any specific PPTs for the resources to be used in the important topics. As my suggestion would be, go and approach your seniors because they are they are from different colleges and different universities. So different college and universities have different resources, the common resources and the last time resources, and also there are different previous year questions which are added as important questions. So my first suggestion would be go and ask your senior, and my second suggestion as a senior would be if you have not prepared physiology throughout the year, don't go behind Brighton, Ganong or AKGen. just go to Ashish Agarwal's note. He's a YouTuber. I won't refer to you his videos, but I'll surely refer you his notes. His notes are really informative. His notes are a summary of Guyton, Genome, and AKGen. I won't suggest you to go through those books, but I will suggest you to go through his notes. His notes can fetch you a good 60% marks. It's as much as I have secured. And for the book part, you can refer to Simulingam for diagrams and flowcharts, and not for a textbook, as you have limited 1 month time. And for the important questions part, every university and colleges have their different list of important set of questions. So go ask your senior, and if your seniors are not helpful enough, then just do one thing. Uh, Collect as many previous year question papers as you can, like from where, like last 20 years, last 10 years, and just write all the topics of a chapter which have been asked in a previous year for that exam. Like if you have your centers exam or pre-prof exam the next month, just acquire as many pre-prof question papers you can, collect them, and write all the important topics. Like for nerve muscle physiology, write all the questions that have been asked, long answer question, short answer question, explain by question. That will be the most helpful resource that you can ever have. So this was all I had to say. And one last suggestion, I am repeating again: go and take help from your senior. They will help a lot. Thank you, Manu.
Thank you, Shaurya, for giving such insightful points for 2023 batches. Now we have to talk on physiology. Kshitij Desai from 2022 batch from AIIMS Patna. So, are you here, Kshitij?
Yeah. Hello. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kshitij. I'm a MBBS student at AIIMS Patna. So now I'm just going to add on a bit to what Shaurya said, and hopefully you guys will find that helpful. So even though we're talking about answer writing, let's first talk about how we focus and where we derive the answers from. So speaking on my personal strategy, what I had is I only trusted one book, which for me was Guyton and Hall, and that was the main book that I know that the bulk of my studies would be done from there. But a lot of people, what they all, and a lot of my friends, the strategy they used was the night before an exam. Obviously, you do not have that much time to go through Guyton in toto. So what they did was they referred to other books such as Physicon or Semolingam, which at least for the major concepts have it displayed very clearly. And so another struggle that I found was that between pre-prof to prof, which a lot of you might be entering, are in that stage or might be entering that stage soon, what happens is your mind gets bored if you try to read the same textbook over and over again, because while reading it, you're like, I know this, and it's very easy and I can follow along. But then if you test yourself on it, you realize that your grasp has slipped. So for that, what I personally did was I looked for another book to at least find those extra points. Because so I between pre-prof to prof, I referred to GK Pal, but I knew that how much ever I'm doing, this is only an excess. And once the exam season actually starts, I'll go back to the textbook or my notes, which I was studying for, which in this case was Guyton. But again, if you guys have found a textbook that works with your vibe and works with your flow, I would suggest going with that, because changing the textbook at this stage for something that you feel like better will only end up in you struggling to adapt to this new system, which will be in the end worse for you guys. Alongside that, the next major brunt of my studies was done by other resources. Like, as much as the textbook is good, at points it becomes monotonous. So that's why what I used to do is I have class notes. So I used to make notes in every class, photos of which I've attached here, and they help for like a quick revision of a concept. And if you don't have notes yourself, a lot of my friends used to take photos of the PPT, and if you have that slash a friend who has that, um, then you can do so. If you guys have a subscription, they help break the monotony again very easily, because it's quick question banks or it's a quick revision or a short video on a directed topic. I personally did not go through first year with any subscription. I relied on YouTube. Like there's Ninja Nerd, there's Nambuja, um, Najib, sorry, Dr. Najib's lectures. And like Shaurya mentioned, Ashish Agarwal is also another great resource. So now how do you actually revise the text itself? So all of you have done NEET to obviously a great extent, which is why you're in an MBBS college. So and you've experienced MBBS now for 5 to 6 months. So you have your own learning style. and trust the way you learn, because at the end of the day, everyone is personalized. So I personally knew that I had to make revision notes, and that's the only way a topic would go into my head. Some of my friends used to highlight the textbook, and they felt like that would, they felt good enough from that experience, and others used to watch videos and make notes. So my personal advice, what worked for me was making notes. But again, if you have a method that's working, don't try and sacrifice it in just because you feel like it's not what's being told to you. Second, like Shaurya mentioned, at the end of the day, diagrams and flowcharts are very easy ways to get marks. And uh, even if you're writing the 5 to 6 points in a paragraph, or even if you're writing them as points, if you write it as a flowchart, it's instantly going to be much better for the examiner and much more understandable for the examiner. So they would prefer, because at the end of the day, your aim in the exam is to make it as easy as it is for the examiner to give you that mark. Next is active recall. So what I faced a lot is I was reading it, and then the next day I'm like, shit, do I even remember all of it, or how much do I remember? So active recall could be anything. It could be doing repeating the quizwing quizzes you've seen and going through that answer key, or it could be searching for Kahoot or other online quizzes or YouTube videos. So basically what it helps is it quickly helps you get a test and helps you get over that fear, like I'm not able to remember anything. Another thing, like many people have mentioned, is clinical correlations are what sets you apart, because it not only helps the examiner know that you know the concept, but it also helps that you know the concept and are able to take it to the next step and apply it further in your MBBS journey. So these boxes that I've highlighted are from GKPAL, and I found that when it comes to these boxes, since they're easily presentable on the page, they like quickly, like while I was reading it, they grabbed my attention, and they have a lot of interesting facts that can set you apart, because everyone's going to write the same answer, but those one or two extra facts in either presenting it or adding these is what's going to set you apart. So now next, the markings for the syllabus itself. Again, this PPT will be shared. And like Shaurya mentioned, each college is slightly different. So first, trust your seniors. But this is generally something I've accumulated by asking my friends all over India. And when it comes to these, for a few of these, these are going to be important. So if you have beforehand, if you can practice like certain long answers on how to present this, so while you're revising, for example, cardiac cycle is going to come up somewhere, or even if the question is not on the cardiac cycle, in any serious question mostly you can add some part of it. So if you have a ready to go answer that you have practiced once or twice, what happens is when the exam rolls around and you see that question, you don't become stressed or worried ki, am I hitting every point, because you have done those. So from personal experience, like in endocrine, what I found very hard was the effect of hormone action, because I understood it, and like I know that it does all of this, and clinically these are the repercussions. But what happens was, if you ask me effects of thyroid, I'll hit the major 2, 3, but then I'll start forgetting the rest. Like I'll forget that it has an effect on GIT. But if you ask me its effect, I might remember it. So because you have practiced this, or at least remember, like I also like to do is I have a rough idea. Okay, इस chapter में suppose there are like 3 concepts, each with like 5 to 6 points. So I know that if I'm hitting 4, then I have 1 to 2 points remaining that I can recollect later in the exam. And like Shaurya mentioned, you can leave space between answers, so that later, if you because what it happened to me a lot during my exam is I will be writing the question and then I'm like, shit, yeah, like I'm forgetting something. But then later on, when I'm doing another answer, I'm like, oh, that's the answer. So then if you leave space and account for that space, it'll become much easier for you to not miss any point and come back to it faster. So again, these are some more, and higher functions is usually something that's not very clear upon, because again, in the medical fraternity only, there's not a lot of consensus. So in that case, I feel like if you don't get the gist of the concept, like I never understood to a high extent what it did, but I just knew that there's some points that I have to hit in that answer. Even if I cannot explain it further on, just seeing those points or seeing those diagrams will make the examiner happy. So even if you don't have a full understanding of the concept, as long as you have those 2, 3 things that is important and the examiner knows is important, you can go through it. So don't be stressed or worried as much. So next part is practicals, which we often forget about until the practical starts. But I feel like it's better to get done with it in the beginning itself. So the main thing you have to mug up in the exam is the principles and values. And what I like to do is if you guys we had an our objective structured practical or objective structured clinical examination. So I used, for physio especially, I used to practice that on my friends for like human lab or examinations, because at the end of the day, as much as you feel like you're remembering it while reading it, until you do it, it's not going to hold any merit. Then you have to learn at least like two causes for any increase, decrease, or any abnormality, because the first questions are going to be like, okay, what could go wrong in this patient? Okay, and give another example. And to get over the fear of Viva, what I used to do is practice with my friends again while walking to mess, or like if you need a break from studying. So you could do those. And one other tip for Viva or clinical correlations as a whole is don't be afraid to steal stuff from biochem or anat, because at the end of the day, physio mein textbook has only that much. So what if the question is on insulin? You have learned insulin both from a perspective of biochemistry and physiology. So don't be afraid to take biochem points, or if you can't remember a physio flowchart, take a biochem flowchart and put. Because for the examiner, all the examiner is not going to know the biochem portion that well. For the examiner, it's going to be like, okay, this child is applying more, or this child has gone through other sources. And even for anat, if you like, if the question is on heart, you can just, or if someone asks you about heart and you're more confident about embryo, then steal some points from embryo and put it, because at the end of the day, you are learning it as a holistic basis. So, and for OSCE especially, our college or online even has these resources where each OSCE, they describe like a certain stepwise pattern that you have to hit, and if you miss a step, then you lose out on those points. So these are some that we found online or our college provided. So as long as if you practice this with your friends twice or thrice, then it becomes much more easier and much more recollectible, especially for practical. So that would be my last advice. And don't worry, physio is that sort of subject where you can make a story if you want to. So all you have to prove to the examiner is, I know something about the topic. So if you feel panicked or anything, don't. Just know that at the end of the day, you can collect points from everywhere, because I used a lot of NEET points as well, like what I was studying for NEET, especially for topics such as HIMAT. So don't be afraid to do that, because wherever you're studying from, at the end of the day, the content is going to be the same. And don't worry, you guys are studying, you guys are putting a lot of effort, and that result will be there. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Desai and Shaurya. Physiology is actually a very broad topic with multiple horizons, and giving advices to our juniors, like correlating it with biochemistry or even anatomy, is a gold thing that you have put in. These people who have talked on physiology are the prodigies in their college life. So 23 batch people, you can learn a lot. Secondly, I would also like to tell all the people who joined that you can actually put in your concerns in the comment box. We are answering those, and we'll also try to answer some of the good questions at the end of the session. Now, moving on with the most dreaded subject, anatomy. People tend to give their 80% of study time to anatomy and still don't get through. Also, it's like you study it in great detail, but when you go in exams, you do not know how to replicate your answers. So we have two speakers on anatomy. First is Shagufta Naaz, and second is Naman Bhaskar. These two are from IGIMS second MBBS, and they'll explain you in great detail about how to write answers and how to approach the subject in general. Starting with, I would like to call upon Shagufta Naaz for anatomy part. Shagufta, are you ready to start with?
Boss, I'm starting with the anatomy part, actually. Shagufta is the second speaker.
Oh, okay, okay. I got the list that told Shagufta was the first one. So we have Naman first is starting. So you can carry on from here.
Thank you, boss. Hopefully, I'm audible. So, after buzzing biochemistry and fizzing physiology, let's move to a subject that hits your adrenaline harder, anatomy. Well, before starting anything, I would like to say if there's a strategy that's already working for you, then don't get influenced by this presentation. Of course, you can add up things from it. Now, the first thing that comes to our mind when we hear about anatomy is there's so much to learn, and how I'll be able to learn all that. But let's reframe this question. is there too much to learn, or we simply don't know how much to learn? And I'll be answering it in the slides that follows. Well, first things first, anatomy has theory and then there's practical. In theory, there's this part where we learn all the things, and then there's delivery, in which we showcase our knowledge. In practical, similarly, we have resources from where we learn, and then presentation, which actually fetches marks. In learning, we have the gross part and the non-gross part, which includes histology, embryology, neuroanat. So all these things in red will be covered by me, and the delivery and the presentation of the practical will be covered by Shagufta in the coming as the coming presenter. So gross and all the non-gross subject topics will cover it under 5 major headings. Firstly, the syllabus, then the resources, then how to utilize those resources, that is resource utilization, then extracting key content or the questions, and then finally routine and revision. So syllabus for my university was paper 1, we had general anatomy. Then in gross, we had upper limb, head and neck, general histology, general embryology, neuroanat, and applied around 20%, which is nothing but the clinical part. In paper 2, we had gross lower limb, thorax, abdomen, and pelvis. Then systemic histology, systemic embryology, genetics, which is again a part of embryology, and then applied 20%. Now let's move on to subjects. Firstly, histo. Resources. The books that I followed were in the Singh, and for practical, your histo lab is the best resource. The slides that your college have are at par to any other resource for you. The resource utilization. So in histo, there are 2 important things which you need to keep in mind. Firstly, the diagram, which is very much important, and then the points of identification. So any topic should be covered under these headings. Firstly, a self-explanatory diagram. Again, from where should you pick up the diagram? So the best source for diagrams are the practical notebooks that are checked by your faculties. And your practical notebook checked by your faculty, it is because they are in a way verified by your professors. But if you do not have that in your college, then you can refer to in the Thing for diagram. Also for point of identification, you can refer in the Thing. Below every diagram, there's 4 to 5 point of identification mentioned, and you should at least go through it. And then don't forget to remember a clinical, a line or 2. Then talking about embryology, the books that I referred to were in the Thing, Vishram Singh and Langmans, and the lectures that I followed were from e-Gurukul and Marrow. Now, resource utilization. So understanding embryology is more like understanding a story. You could, be it systemic embryology or be it general embryology, everything is connected, and you could recall everything if you connect the dots. And if you cannot understand from text, then in embryology, you must use lectures for understanding and picking up diagrams. And now that you've understood from the lectures, you should consider a book for answer writing. And in my case, it was Vishram Singh. But again, with Vishram Singh, I felt that some questions were not much elaborated that are certain to come. And for that, I used Langmans. If we understand through example, then for example, this is development of heart. So I understood the formation of heart tube and its subdivision along with the fate of dilatations from Marrow lecture. Then after understanding it, I picked up the statement and diagram for the development of heart chambers from Vishram Singh. But yet again, in Vishram Singh, the phylotetralogy was not much elaborated. So for questions that are quite important, are certain to come, I added content from Langmans to the existing Vishram Singh paragraph.
Excuse me, Naman. Sorry to interrupt. I guess your PPT slides are not being changed. Yeah, no, it's getting changed.
Which slide is it currently showing, boss?
It is currently showing 11th, but for the past time which you were speaking, it was on first slide only. So I guess you can just skip through all the slides, maybe in a minute or 2, so that
Okay,
people
boss.
just see what was there.
Is it visible now, boss?
Yeah,
second.
yeah, it's visible now. The second is visible. You can just
Okay.
skip through in 1.5 minutes. That
Yeah,
would be
sure.
good for the people.
So this was all the chronology of anatomy. Then the syllabus of paper 1 and paper 2. In histo, nothing much already. The IBISing and your histo lab, then resource diagram and point of identification, which I already mentioned. Means nothing much was there in the slide, beside what I already spoke. The resource utilization, example development of it. So let's begin from the 11th slide. That is, in embryology, there are certain questions in which we need to write the development of viscerals. And the major difficulty in writing those questions is understanding the sequence of events and getting a diagram that is easy to draw in the examination. Well, both of these are well tackled in Dr. Ashwini lectures in e-Gurukul. After understanding, you can take up the text for writing from any book that you followed. In my case, it was Vishram Singh. And then finally, while writing the development of Vishra, don't forget to mention the developmental anomalies that will be your clinical. Now, the final non-gross part is neuron. So the books that I followed were Vishram Singh and Selective Anatomy by Vishram Singh, and lecture that I referred to were from E. Gurukul. And trust me, E. Gurukul was the best source for me. Because if you have not done anything yet in neuroanatomy, then just view all the lectures from E. Gurukul, especially about the tracks. And there's this special thing about the E. Gurukul lecture about Dr. Ashwini is that you can take up the transverse section diagrams from E. Gurukul lectures itself, because in the book they are very much complicated. And for answer writing, you could use Selective Anatomy of Vishram Singh. It may sound a bit off why I'm suggesting Selective Anatomy, but trust me, if you do not have much time left for neuroanatomy, then it has got questions covered from all the important topics and under all important headings, and you must give it a try. Now, finally, coming to the gross part, which is quite a burden. So the resources books, you could either follow BDC or Vishram Singh or both, as you like. And lecture, I think Dr. Ashwini's lecture from E. Gurukul are best. Now, resource utilization. So whenever you are reading the book, read the topic, underline the important line from the topic, and then again, when you learn those particular lines. But the question arises, what needs to be underlined? And that is the crux of this presentation, how much to learn. So in general, if we talk, then you need to underline a line or two about the introduction, then a couple of lines in the subheadings, a diagram, a clinical and development if it is asked for that particular question. Now let's understand by example. If we go unit wise, then for upper and lower limb, for example, questions like axilla. So in introduction, you could highlight the axilla is a pyramidal space between upper part of the arm and the side of the chest wall. Then in subheadings, there would be two things. Firstly, the boundaries, and then the content of the axilla, and then finally a clinical. So in Vishram Singh, there's no mention of clinical from the axilla, but you can take it from BDC. So in this way, you could utilize both the BDC and Vishram Singh to get the best outcome. Now in upper and lower limb, we have another set of questions that are related to muscles. So there are so many muscles that one is always prone to confusion about them. So what's the best way for understanding the origin and insertion of muscle is always through diagram for proper visualization. Example, let's talk about tibialis anterior. So origin, there are three major origins: upper 2/3 of the lateral surface of tibia, which we could easily visualize from the diagram, then adjoining part of the interosseous membrane, and third, the distal part of the lateral condyle of the tibia. So even if you remember two of these 3 points, it is more than enough, as the examiner itself do not remember all the points. And again, for insertion, there's medial cuneiform and adjoining part of the base of the first metatarsal. So use diagrams for remembering the insertion and origin and insertion of muscles. Also remember clinical only for those muscles which are asked in short notes. You do not need to remember clinical for all the muscles, of course. Example, deltoid is an important muscle, hamstring muscles are important, and you need to remember clinical from them, not for all the muscles. Now, third set of questions are regarding arteries and nerves. So try to cover any artery or nerve under these 5 headings. Firstly, the origin, then the course, and then relation and branches, and then again do it from diagrams, and finally the clinical. In course, try to answer 3 things: how it begins, how it runs, and how it ends. For example, let's talk about dorsalis pedis artery. So origin, it is the direct continuation of the anterior tibial artery line. Then course, how it begins in front of the angle between medial and lateral malleoli. How it runs, it passes forward along the medial side of the dorsum of the foot. And how it ends, it dips downward to enter the sole of the foot, where it ends by anastomosing with the lateral plantar artery. Then again, the relation and the branches would be very easy if you learn through the diagram, and then finally a clinical correlation. Now moving on to thorax. So you need to remember only 3 things, and that will fetch you the relation and course of almost all the structures in thorax, be it portal vein, be it internal thoracic artery, or be it thoracic duct. These 3 things are firstly understanding the diaphragmatic openings, or remembering that which structure passes through which of the diaphragmatic openings. Secondly, using diagrams over text, which I have repeatedly told in the previous slides as well, and it is a general rule for the entire anatomy. And finally, building an orientation of how these structures are arranged in that particular diaphragmatic opening. For example, let's talk about thoracic duct. So we'll be remembering the relation and the course from this diagram itself. So if we know that the thoracic ducts entered the thorax through the aortic opening at T12 level, then that would be a point in the course. If we have orientation of the structures in the aortic opening, then aorta, descending aorta is to the left, azygous vein is to the right. Behind, obviously, we'll have a vertebral column, and in front we have esophagus. So that would give us the relation. And Again, in the diagram, if we follow, then we can see that at the lower border of T4, it is somewhat deviating to the left, and finally at the level of C7, it is draining into the junction between the left interjugular vein and left subclavian vein. So in this way, we could write the course, we could write the relation, and also draw a diagram. That is more than enough for any question. Now let's move on to another topic, that is another unit, that is head and neck. And it is quite difficult. It seemed quite difficult to me as well. But if you try to understand any question under these 9 headings, then it may seem to have some sort of order. Firstly, the introduction. Secondly, the features. Then muscles, if there are any. And then again, the insertion and origin through the diagrams. Then the nerve supply, blood supply, venous and lymphatic drainages. So the supply and drainage actually depend upon the given structure. If that particular structure is given, then it might be that lymphatic drainage would be important for it. It might be that blood supply would be important for it. But nerve supply in general is important for almost all these structures. Then again, try to understand the nerve supply by understanding the ganglions. Okay, do not try to learn or just mug up nerve supply for every question. Understand the ganglions, and that will give you the idea about the nerve supply of almost all the structure in head and neck. Then a clinical, and then development. Not for all the question, development is for certain question like thyroid. So let's understand with example. So soft palate, I had a 1-line introduction, that it is a movable muscular fold suspended from the posterior border of the hard palate. Then features, we have surfaces and borders. Then muscle, because there are muscle in soft palate. Try to understand these muscles from the diagram, the origin and the insertion. And then we have nerve supply. So nerve supply, as I said, that understand the ganglion. For here, it is related to pterygopalatine ganglion. So if we see pterygopalatine ganglion, then we have superior salivatory nucleus, which gives rise to superficial greater petrosal nerve, which forms nerve of pterygoid canal. Then finally, the pterygopalatine ganglion and lesser palatine branches to the soft palate. So understanding pterygopalatine ganglion would not only give you the nerve supply of soft palate, but also the lacrimal gland, the nasal branches, the greater palatine nerve, and almost all the nerve that arises from pterygopalatine ganglion. Then finally, you could write that blood supply, venous drainage, lymphatic drainage, and a clinical. Again, the drainage and the supply are subjective to what the structure given is. Now for abdomen and pelvis, there are 10 headings that you need to focus on. Firstly, the introduction, just like head and neck. Then again, the external features and relation through diagrams. Then coverings or ligaments, if there are any. Then blood supply, venous drainage, lymphatic supply, nerve supply. In it, blood supply and lymphatic supply are majorly important. However, nerve supply of certain structures are also very important. Example, the urinary bladder. Then we have clinical and development. So do a development along with the structure, so you do not have to do it in embryo again, because anyhow development would be coming in your professional examination. So let's understand through kidney. In introduction, you need to focus on 3 points. Firstly, the location, then the weight, and then the dimension. So let's understand through the example of kidney. We have location, we have the weight, and then we have dimension. Then we have external features and the relation with the help of the diagram. Then in kidney, we have capsule. So I mentioned of the capsule. Then we have arterial supply, venous drainage, lymphatic drainage, and clinical. Also try to understand the arterial supply of venous drainage through the help of diagram if it is possible. So once we are done with gross, before gross, in the non-gross topics, be it embryology or neuroanatomy, it was like the better you understand, the better you'll memorize. But in gross, the better you memorize, the better you understand. You need not to understand everything, but you have to memorize everything. And if you memorize in a systemic manner, it will help you in 3 ways. First, it will help you frame your answer, because already you're learning everything in a systemic way. You do not need to frame it again. It will help you to maintain pace while writing an examination, because you will not have to think on in which order I need to arrange these topics. And finally, when you are underlining the important lines, you are itself preparing for MCQs. So MCQ preparation can also be done when you memorize by underlining important things. So first, the resource was books. Now, second resource utilization for lectures. As I already mentioned, lectures can be used for understanding, for diagrams, especially neuroanat. And lectures can also be used for preparation of notes, but always carry a book alongside when you are preparing notes. Now, extracting key content or important question. So the important question for you is your university PYQs. Secondly, the important question will be the topics that are stressed by your faculties. And when your faculty is stressing on a particular topic, you just cannot miss it. And If you do not have access to either first or two, then a list of important questions will be provided by coming presenter, that is Shagufta. Now, finally, the routine and revision. Generally, it is advised that we must not go in a flow. But on my end, I'll suggest that go in a flow for anatomy. By which I mean do not dilute anatomy with any other subject while reading and try to cover the related units together, like upper limb with lower limb. And if you ask for an order in which you should proceed for anatomy, it's gross, followed by embryo, then histo, and then neuronat. At least it used to work for me. Now, if anatomy is your first paper, then revise it at last. So what I did was anatomy used to be my first paper. Then we had physiology and biochemistry. So while revising on the subject, I used to revise biochemistry first, then physiology, and last 10 days I used to revise anatomy, and then just go in the exam and write it fresh with fresh mind. Now, when you are preparing routine, then distribute days for unit and hours for topic, by which I mean that there are in gross, we have certain units like upper limb and lower limb, head and neck, thorax, abdomen, and pelvis. So if you are taking up a target that I'll finish anatomy in 7 days, then distribute days for those units. Like I'll do upper and lower limb on the first day. On the second day, I'll do thorax and head and neck. On the third day, I'll do abdomen and pelvis. Now, again, in that particular day, what will you do in the particular hours? For example, the first I'll read this topic of upper limb, and the second I'll do that topic of upper limb. And when you make a routine, whatever you're targeting, if not in the expected days, then with a margin of 1 or 2 days in a subject like anatomy, which is so vast. And before going to the anatomy paper, just make sure that you revise everything twice at least, because otherwise everything will just keep juggling in your brain and you'll forget everything and you'll mug up things, mix up things. So at least revise twice before going to the examination hall. Now, once we are done with the theory part, let's move on to practical and what could be your resources for practical. So for histo, as I already mentioned, your histo lab slides are the best resources for you. For identification and for point of identification, you can refer to MBBS. So what you should do is make a PDF of all the slides that are available in your university or in a college, and then try to look at as many times as you can. Now for osteo, the resources are Vishram Singh or the Handbook of Osteology by Prodar, and for video lecture, you could refer Viran Karya YouTube channel. Now in osteology, you should do these things at least. Do all the long bones in detail along with the scapula. Then at least for vertebrae and ribs, you should know how to identify them. And at last, cranial cavity is a must. So you must take skull in your hand and then go through every structure that passes through the openings and try to learn it up, means as accurately as you can. Now for dissection, the only advice is to spend as much time as you can with the cadaver. Just do not bunk your dissection classes. Even if your dissection is not scheduled, then in the lunch break or in the break that you're given, go to the dissection hall and spend some time with the cadaver. For video resources, there's Mitesh Dev and Viva Voce of Anatomy on YouTube. And I personally believe that theory is sufficient if you could understand the structures that are within the body, that if you have spent time with the cadaver, then whatever theory you have in your mind, you could correlate it with the cadaver. So, and for final time revision, you could brush up the insertion and origin of muscle of the important compartment, and also brush up the nerve supply. For visceras, learn to hold the visceras in the anatomical position, and that is a very basic for all the visceras, and you must know how to do it. And rest all the questions that are asked by the examiner could be answered if you have a command over theory. The major questions that are asked are mainly the external features and the relation. And the video lecture that you could follow is from Mitesh Dev YouTube. Now in X-ray, whenever X-ray is given, try to answer any X-ray or explain any X-ray in these 7 headings. Firstly, the type. Second, the view. Then the region. Then the structures that are visible. Then the joints that those structures are forming, and any peculiarities like or technical in case of chest X-ray. Then any clinical correlate if you know. And others question that might be asked by examiner, formation of the X-ray, what is its wavelength and the principle. And for surface marking, it is not much of a burden. It is given at the back of Vishram Singh or BDC. Also, a surface marking PDF is already shared in the Quizlings group. And if you want, it could be shared again. So that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Naman. Perfectly explained the most feared subject. And you very well told about the importance of dissection also. And your explanation was kind of for all the students, the people who are like dedicated to studying anatomy for throughout the year. They could also like use your suggestions, and also for people who have like only 10-15 days left, they could use your suggestions and just help themselves get through the exam. Now, finally, for anatomy, we have another speaker, Shagufta Naaz, to throw some light on the remaining topics. Shagufta, are you ready with your PPT?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So we'll start with Shagufta.
Yes, sir. Sir, am I visible? Am I
Yeah,
visible and audible?
yeah, you are visible.
Okay, sir. So is it visible?
Yeah, perfect. You could start
Yeah.
from your
So
presentation.
here, I'm Shagufta Naaz, and I'm a second year medical student from IGIMS Patna, and I'm here to present you how to write answers in your question paper for your, especially for your profs and pre-profs. So, and also I have mentioned all about the preparation tips that you should focus on, and also I have included all the important questions at the end of this PPT. So, starting with the very first slide. So I've included all the topics which I'm going to cover. Prof question paper format. अब questions students generally होता क्या है कि question paper का format ही नहीं जानते हैं. तो first we'll talk about the format and marks distribution. Then we'll talk about the strategies and sequence of attempting the questions. What should be the question? What are the questions to be attempted first? Then time management. Then answer writing के बारे में I'll talk about. और फिर practical presentation. It's not all about gross and theories. Practical को present करना is very important, no? फिर prof related question preparation tips I have included in all the question papers and all the important questions of different topics. So starting with the very first, prof question paper format. So question paper format may the sequence can be changed, but the format usually remains the same in all the universities. There are 2 long questions which are being asked, each containing 10 marks. So iske baad we have short questions, each containing 5 marks. There are 4 short questions. Then we have 4 explain wise, each containing 5 marks, and enumerations. Usually 10 होते हैं, लेकिन उससे ज़्यादा भी हो सकते हैं. Then we have MCQs like 20, each containing single marks. Now moving on to the next slide. So this is just a sample paper. मैंने इसे include किया है. This is the prof question paper of anatomy paper 1 of 2022 batch from our university. So you can see here that there's a 2 long question each containing 10 marks. Same format है यहाँ पे भी. 4 short questions are there, 4 explain wise are there, 10 enumerations and 20 MCQs. So what should be the sequence of attempting the question? Personally, मैं prefer करती थी कि to write the MCQs first, and then long, then short, then explain wise enumerations. The reason behind that the key, if you correct all the MCQs, then you will get the full marks. अगर long question में even if you write 4 to 5 pages or 5 to 6 pages, max to max you'll get 7 to 8 marks.
Very sorry to interrupt, Shagufta. I guess your slides are not changing, or they're not in sequence also maybe. You could just start with first slide and see. Yeah. Okay. So this is a fifth slide, and you can continue.
So is it visible
Like,
now?
yeah, it's visible. Fifth is visible.
So the second
Actually,
one?
I would like do a full screen and then try to change because it's stuck on fifth now.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
sir.
changing now. Change to third, right?
Okay, sir. So I'm using the full screen. So
Yeah, yeah, we could do a
okay.
check if it's changing.
Is it changing?
Yeah, it's changing. You'll have to manually change, I guess.
Okay, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we have talked about the sequence of attempting the questions. It's important for managing the time as well. So MCQs में क्या होते हैं ना कि if you have read the chapters carefully, if you have gone through the syllabus carefully, so MCQs will be very easy for you. 10 to 15 minutes में you will do all the MCQs. ठीक है, तो 10 to 15 minutes will be enough for MCQs. Then long questions के लिए 1 hour इसलिए मैंने दिया है, मैं भी long questions 1 hour के ही लेती थी, because these are the questions which will be checked by the examiner first. ठीक है, फर्स्ट लॉन्ग क्वेश्चन सबसे पहले क्वेश्चन ऐसे होंगे ना, दैट विल बी चेक बाय द एग्जामिनर, तो यू हैव टू प्रेजेंट इट इन द बेस्ट वे पॉसिबल. टाइम दो इसको, सबसे पहले डायग्राम्स प्रॉपर्ली बनाना है, फिर आगे मैं बताऊंगी कैसे कैसे अटेम्प्ट करने लॉन्ग क्वेश्चंस. देन शॉर्ट क्वेश्चंस के लिए 30 to 35 मिनट्स विल बी इनफ. एक्सप्लेन वाइज के लिए भी इनफ, बिकॉज एक्सप्लेन वाई में यू हैव टू राइट द रीजंस परफेक्टली. इट इज नॉट ऑल अबाउट फिलिंग द पेजेस. तो रीजन अगर करेक्ट होते तो यू विल गेट इनफ मार्क्स. फिर इनोमिनेशंस के लिए 15 मिनट्स विल बी इनफ, बिकॉज इट इज ऑल अबाउट द थ्योरी पोर्शन. इनोमिनेशन भी वहीं से करते हैं, कुछ एक्स्ट्रा करना नहीं है. इफ यू आर गेटिंग 10 मार्क्स लेफ्ट विथ यू, तो फिर प्लीज लिसन टू मी, चेक इफ यू हैव लेफ्ट समथिंग, क्योंकि मेरे साथ ऐसा ब्लंडर हो चुका है कि क्वेश्चन छूट जाते हैं एंड वी थिंक कि क्वेश्चन नहीं छूटे हैं एंड वी आर स्टिल हैविंग द टाइम, बट वी डू नॉट अटेम्प्ट दोस लेफ्ट क्वेश्चन. तो चेक इफ यू हैव लेफ्ट समथिंग इन योर क्वेश्चन पेपर. अगर क्वेश्चन छूटे हैं तो डू अटेम्प्ट इट फर्स्ट एंड देन color the diagrams properly, underline all the key points. Moving on to the next slide, I'm talking about answer writing. लॉन्ग क्वेश्चंस में जो मैंने एनालाइज किया है डिफरेंट क्वेश्चन पेपर, देयर आर पेपर 1 में 1 लॉन्ग क्वेश्चन इज मैंडेटरी फ्रॉम न्यूरो एनाटॉमी. देन 1 लॉन्ग क्वेश्चन आर आस्क्ड फ्रॉम ईदर द अपर लिम्ब और हेड एंड नेक. पेपर 2 में क्या होता है ना कि एक एब्डोमेन से हो जाएंगे, एक भी कोई भी एब्डोमिनल स्ट्रक्चर और ऑर्गन, एंड 1 फ्रॉम द रेस्ट ऑफ द चैप्टर. इट इंक्लूड्स थोरैक्स, पेल्विस एंड लोअर लिम्ब. सो लॉन्ग क्वेश्चन का मैंने एक फॉर्मेट यहाँ पे मैंने एक एग्जाम्पल के तौर पे एक क्वेश्चन ले रखा है एंड यहाँ पे मैंने शॉर्ट नोट्स अपने एडेड किए कि कैसे इसे अटेम्प्ट करना है. सो दिस वाज आस्क्ड इन लास्ट ईयर पेपर, प्रॉफ पेपर. तो डिस्क्राइब द रिलेशन ब्लड सप्लाई, ये सारी चीजें मेंशन होती हैं क्वेश्चन में ऑलरेडी, बट लिसन, before coming to the topic already mentioned in the question, you have to introduce the topic first. Introduction is very necessary ki what you are talking about, like 3 to 4 words should be there jo define kare aapke topic ko, jo bhi aap explain kar rahe ho. If when you move on to the next topic jo bhi aapka mention hai already question mein, like here it is relations, तो relations को अगर आप define कर रहे हो तो you have to draw the perfect diagram, like well labeled and colored diagram should be there. ये वाला diagram आप देख सकते हो, इसमें पूरे के पूरे पार्ट्स ऑफ पैनक्रियाज के सारे पार्ट्स का रिलेशन यहाँ पे विजिबल है. तो ये आप डायग्राम यूज कर सकते हो एज योर फर्स्ट डायग्राम ऑन योर फर्स्ट पेज ऑफ योर आंसर पेपर. तो ये बहुत ज्यादा फैसिनेटिंग है और ये दैट विल बी बेस्ट फॉर योर आंसर पेपर. तो फिर ये यूज कर सकते हो ना, बेसिक डायग्राम मेंशनिंग ऑल अबाउट ऑल द डिफरेंट पार्ट्स ऑफ द पैनक्रियाज ये. एंड देन अगर आप जब आप रिलेशंस पे आते हो तो आपको एक एरो या फिर एरो देके भी आप कर सकते हो. लाइक अगर हेड है तो हेड में एरोज देकर आप ऐसे कर दो कि सर्फेसेस मेंशन कर दो. देन उसके बॉर्डर्स होते हैं, बॉर्डर्स के रिलेशन, जैसे कि मैंने नेक्स्ट पेज में कर रखा है जहाँ पे फीचर्स है, 2 बॉर्डर्स है तो मैंने एरो देकर लिख रखा है. देन 2 सर्फेसेस है तो वो मैंने लिख रखा है. ऐसे कर दो. 2 डायग्राम्स इनफ होते हैं फॉर ईच टॉपिक. अब नेक्स्ट टॉपिक अगर ब्लड सप्लाई है तो ब्लड सप्लाई में एक डायग्राम बना दो. और फिर ये सारे टॉपिक्स इसलिए मैंने लिए कि दीज आर द कॉमन टॉपिक्स जो कि हर एक क्वेश्चन, जो भी लॉन्ग क्वेश्चन रहते हैं उसमें इंक्लूडेड रहते हैं. तो ब्लड सप्लाई है तो ड्रॉ द कलर डायग्राम, वेल लेबल्ड डायग्राम. उसके बाद ही मेंशन करो अबाउट ऑल द आर्टरीज. एंड वेनस ड्रेनेज है तो उसके बारे में मेंशन करो. देन लिम्फेटिक ड्रेनेज पॉइंट वाइज लिखो. नर्व सप्लाई है तो सिंपैथेटिक एंड पैरासिम्पैथेटिक को एरो देके लिख सकते हो. तो ये सारे टॉपिक्स करेक्ट करने के बाद आपके पास आते क्लिनिकल कोरिलेशन. Whether it is mentioned in the question or not, you have to write it. Clinical correlation minimum 2 लिखने ही लिखने हैं, either it is mentioned or not. ठीक है. इसके बाद अब होता क्या, सेमेस्टर्स तक we have हम लोगों ने देखा था कि सेमेस्टर्स तक एम्ब्रियो पार्ट ग्रॉस के साथ कंबाइन नहीं होता है. ठीक है. लेकिन प्रॉफ और प्री प्रॉस में एम्ब्रियो पार्ट भी कंबाइन होते हैं. तो डेवलपमेंट अलोंग विद ग्रॉस के साथ, ग्रॉस फीचर्स के साथ डेवलपमेंट भी पूछ देते हैं. तो डेवलपमेंट में बुलेट पॉइंट्स यूज करो, फ्लो चार्ट्स बनाओ, वैसे लिखो. एंड ऑल्सो ड्रॉ द डायग्राम प्रॉपर्ली. पहले पेज में डायग्राम ही बना दो, एक सिंपल बेसिक डायग्राम भी चलेगा, बट यू हैव टू ड्रॉ द डायग्राम. एंड क्लिनिकल कोरिलेशन एज मेंशन्ड अर्लियर, वेदर इट इज मेंशन्ड इन द क्वेश्चन और नॉट, यू हैव टू ऐड इट. मिनिमम 2 होने ही चाहिए. ठीक है. देन हिस्टोलॉजी में यूज द HNE पेंसिल्स, बिकॉज उससे बहुत ही ब्राइट कलर डायग्राम्स बनते हैं. अगर नहीं है तो कोई भी कलर्ड पेंसिल्स यूज कर सकते हो, लेकिन ट्राई करो कि HNE ही रहे. ठीक है। उसके बाद ऑल्सो वेल लेबल्ड होना चाहिए, यहाँ पे सारे के सारे लेबलिंग करो प्रॉपरली, देन उसके बारे में लिखो। एंड मैग्निफिकेशन, बहुत सारे बच्चे मैग्निफिकेशन नहीं लिखते हैं, अब मैग्निफिकेशन भी इंपॉर्टेंट होता है, ये लिखना चाहिए। और उसके बाद इसे सर्कुलर में बनाते हैं, बहुत सारे बच्चे जो होते हैं स्क्वायर के बॉक्स में बना देते हैं हिस्टो के डायग्राम्स, दैट इज रॉन्ग। आपको सर्कुलर बॉर्डर में ही बनाना है इसे, because that's how you see in the microscope, right? उसके बाद points of identification जिस डायग्राम के नीचे लिखो, पॉइंट वाइज लिखो, that will कम भी लिखोगे चलेगा, but important key points उसमें mentioned होने चाहिए। For example, ilium है तो you should mention about the pairs patches, ठीक है। and उसके बाद clinical correlation is must, अगर हो सकता है तो क्लिनिकल कोरिलेशन भी लर्न करो, 2-3 अगर नाम भी लिख देते हो, you'll get enough marks। शॉर्ट क्वेश्चंस में मैंने ये एग्जांपल लिया, I've taken this cavernous sinus because there are different subtopics which are included in this, different subtopics are there in the cavernous sinus जिस पे different types of questions can be framed। अब आप cavernous sinus याद कर रहे हो तो बस लेबल, डायग्राम और उसके एक्सटेंट और रिलेशन से काम नहीं चलता है, इसके इनकमिंग ट्रिब्यूटरीज ये सब भी याद करने, बिकॉज इस पे भी क्वेश्चंस आते हैं, ठीक है। तो ये हो गया कि आप अगर कैवर्नस साइनस याद कर रहे हो तो क्या क्या टॉपिक्स याद करने चाहिए। अगर शॉर्ट नोट ऑफ कैवर्नस साइनस आता है तो अगर इफ यू आर हैविंग इनफ टाइम देन डू मेंशन अबाउट द डेफिनेशन इज अ मस्ट, यू हैव टू मेंशन अबाउट इट। उसके बाद क्लिनिकल डायग्राम, एक प्रॉपर डायग्राम बनाओ, उसमें लेबलिंग करो, उसके बारे में थोड़ा सा एक्सप्लेन करो, देन एक्सटेंट एंड रिलेशंस मस्ट है बनाना। Then incoming tributaries if mentioned in the question, do try this also। इसको भी इसको भी लिखो, लेकिन अगर मेंशन नहीं है क्वेश्चन में तो टाइम वेस्ट मत करो, क्लिनिकल कोरिलेशंस के साथ कंटिन्यू करो। क्लिनिकल कोरिलेशंस के बाद then also the paired and impaired sinuses are being asked, कि कौन से paired and impaired sinuses होते हैं cavernous sinus में, तो वो include करो। and then MCQs and enumeration के लिए you do not have to do something extra। अगर आपने gross अच्छे से पढ़ी है, theory अच्छे से की है, तो that will be enough, sufficient होगा for attempting all the MCQs and enumerations, you will correct it all, ठीक है। उसके बाद प्रैक्टिकल प्रेजेंटेशन, अब ये तो हो गया ग्रॉस फीचर्स, सॉरी ग्रॉस एंड थ्योरी पार्ट बच्चे कर लेते हैं, बट प्रैक्टिकल में सब कंफ्यूज हो जाते हैं दैट हाउ टू प्रेजेंट माई सेल्फ इन प्रैक्टिकल एग्जामिनेशन, कैसे हिस्टो में प्रेजेंट करना है, ऑस्टियो में प्रेजेंट करना है। तो यहाँ पे मैंने सब कुछ इंक्लूड कर रखा है कि हिस्टो होते हैं, हिस्टो में स्पॉटिंग्स आर इंक्लूडेड एंड वन मास्टर स्लाइड इज गिवन इन आवर यूनिवर्सिटी, और ओस्टियोलॉजी है, देन एक्सरे एंड सरफेस मार्किंग इज देयर, देन डिसेक्शन, विसरल ऑर्गन एंड ब्रेन एंड स्पाइनल कॉर्ड व्हिच इज अ पार्ट ऑफ न्यूरो एनाटॉमी ऑब्वियसली। तो डिसेक्शन सेमेस्टर्स तक तो डिसेक्शन और विसरल ऑर्गन्स आते थे, अब प्रॉफ में न्यूरो अनाट भी रहता है। एंड कुछ यूनिवर्सिटीज में देयर इज आल्सो एम्ब्रियोलॉजी व्हिच इज इंक्लूडेड है, तो उसमें फ्लो चार्ट्स रहते हैं, उसमें ज्यादा कुछ बस उसे एक्सप्लेन करना रहता है। सो स्टार्टिंग विद द वेरी फर्स्ट व्हिच इज हिस्टोलॉजी, तो what should be done a day before examination? Go through your textbook. It is not possible to learn all the entire textbook, no? So memorize all the points of identification at least. Now correlate the identification points provided in the textbook with the pictures of slide, and listen, always prioritize memorizing the pictures of slides shown in your histo labs during practicals as well as those taken by the seniors. Why? Because these are the slides which will be used in your exams. नए slides नहीं आते, वही सारे slides पुराने use होते हैं, तो उसे memorize करोगे, that will be very beneficial for you। Prepare well for important topics which are frequently asked in master slide। master slides के लिए कुछ important topics होते हैं, जैसे सारे टॉपिक्स नहीं आते मास्टर स्लाइड्स में, कुछ टॉपिक्स होते हैं जो ज्यादा फ्रीक्वेंटली आस्क्ड होते हैं। आई हैव एडेड दैट एट द एंड ऑफ दिस पीपीटी, वो भी मैं आप लोगों को दे दूंगी। देन फिफ्थ पॉइंट है दैट ट्राई मेमोराइजिंग द की पॉइंट्स और आइडेंटिफाइंग फीचर्स फर्स्ट। तो वही मैंने एग्जांपल के थ्रू भी बता रही थी मैं कि पेयर्स पैचेस है फॉर एग्जांपल इलियम में, तो सबसे पहला पॉइंट शुड बी कि पेयर्स पैचेस आर सीन, ऐसे लिखो। तो पहला पॉइंट ये होना चाहिए कि की फीचर्स या फिर आइडेंटिफाइंग फीचर्स शुड बी मेंशन्ड फर्स्ट, उसके बाद सारे पॉइंट्स मेंशन करो। और इफ पॉसिबल आइडेंटिफाइंग फीचर्स रट ही लो, बाकी सारे पॉइंट्स भूल जाओ चलेगा, बट आइडेंटिफाइंग फीचर्स को रटो। फिर on the day of examination go through all the slides in the morning, don't forget to carry HNE pencil along with you। HNE must होता है because उससे बहुत अच्छे डायग्राम्स बनते हैं, सीनियर जूनियर जिसे मांग लो। डायग्राम should be neat and well labeled, mention all the points of identification below the diagram। पॉइंट्स में लिखना पैराग्राफ्स में मत लिखना, और जितना हो सके शॉर्ट ही लिखना, बिकॉज एग्जामिनर आर नॉट हैविंग इनफ टाइम कि आपके हर एक लाइन को पढ़े. 8 क्लिनिकल कोरिलेशन हिस्टो में सब भूल जाते हैं, लेकिन इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. इससे बहुत सारे स्कोर्स इनहांस होते हैं. बेसिकली 2 दे दो, 2 क्लिनिकल कोरिलेशन मिनिमम होते हैं, तो 2 दे दो, दैट विल बी सफिशिएंट. ऑस्टियोलॉजी में होता क्या है, इट इज नॉट ऑल अबाउट थ्योरी पार्ट. इसमें आपको यू हैव टू डेमोन्स्ट्रेट द बोन, यू हैव टू लोकेट द डिफरेंट पॉइंट्स. तो बस थ्योरी पढ़ के तो नहीं होने वाला है. So practice demonstrating different bones 2 to 3 times before Viva, and during Viva if you're asked to demonstrate a bone, never forget to add these key points. कौन-कौन से? सबसे पहले you have to hold it correctly. अब बच्चे होते हैं कि लेफ्ट साइड के बोन को राइट हैंड साइड में पकड़ लेते हैं, तो दैट इज रॉन्ग, और वो बहुत ब्लंडर मिस्टेक होता है, एग्जामिनर को बिल्कुल भी पसंद नहीं है. तो एनाटॉमिकल पोजीशन में टू होल्ड इट इन एनाटॉमिकल पोजीशन इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. देन यू टॉक अबाउट द साइट डिटर्मिनेशन, वो मेंशन करो. पार्ट्स एंड सर्फेसेस एंड बॉर्डर्स जब आप कर रहे हो, जब बोल रहे हो, तो यू हैव टू लोकेट इट साइमल्टेनियसली, नो. तो लोकेट करो उसे. Origin and insertion of muscles बताना जरूरी है. Relations of nerves and vessels are important, and also the clinical correlations, because at the end वो clinical correlation ही पूछेंगे आपसे. Surface marking में कुछ एक्स्ट्रा ज्यादा नहीं करना है. रिसोर्सेज में बता दे रही हूँ. पीडीएफ कुछ सीनियर्स होते हैं, मतलब आपके सीनियर्स ने आपको पीडीएफ प्रोवाइड किया होगा, वो यूज कर लो, या फिर यू कैन यूज योर टेक्स्ट बुक एज वेल. बीटीसी की एंड में एट द एंड ऑफ द चैप्टर्स देयर इज अ स्पेशल सेक्शन व्हिच इज मेड फॉर इंक्लूडिंग ऑल द सरफेस मार्किंग एंड एक्सरेज, तो वो पढ़ लो. बट वहां पे ज्यादा कंटेंट दिए रहते हैं, उसे थोड़ा कम करके पढ़ना. उतना नहीं पूछा जाता है, जितना है उतना एक्सट्रैक्ट कर लो. बाकी सीनियर्स पीडीएफ प्रोवाइड कर देते हैं. इफ यू आर नॉट हैविंग दिस, तो डीएम करना, आई विल सेंड यू. फिर उसके बाद ओवरऑल एनाटॉमी प्रिपरेशन विल कवर द रिमेनिंग क्वेश्चंस. उसके लिए एक्स्ट्रा नहीं करना है सरफेस मार्किंग के लिए. एक्स्ट्रा टाइम बचता है तो आप दूसरे पार्ट को दो. यू हैव टू ट्रेस द पॉइंट्स ऑन योर बॉडी ऑन द बॉडी ऑफ द कैडेवर एंड मेंशन एनी क्लिनिकल कोरिलेशन इफ गिवन इन द टेक्स्ट बुक. टेक्स्ट बुक में है तो वो मेंशन करो, इफ नहीं है तब भी कुछ ना कुछ लर्न करके जाओ कि बोल सको. देन वी हैव एक्सरे. एक्सरेज में मैंने फॉर एग्जांपल मैंने थोरैक्स का एक्सरे यहाँ पे लिया हुआ है. तो फर्स्ट थिंग जो आप लोग से पूछा जाता है कि डिफाइन एक्सरे, और मतलब एक्सप्लेन करो कि ये किस टाइप का एक्सरे है. तो you have to define it like it is a generalized posterior-anterior view of a plain type of X-ray of thorax region. अगर ऐसे explain करते हो तो that will be better. इसके बाद ये 3 चीजें तो include करनी है. इसके बाद you have to mention about all the structures that are visible in this X-ray. ये पूछा जाता है, और मैंने इसमें बहुत सारे डिफरेंट क्वेश्चंस भी इंक्लूड कर रखे हैं जो कि पूछते हैं एग्जामिनर. तो इससे एक दफा इसे पढ़ लेना, दैट विल बी बेनिफिशियल फॉर यू. और फिर विसरास डिसेक्शन इन न्यूरो एनाट के लिए कुछ स्पेशल नहीं करना है. इफ यू हैव रेड योर टेक्स्ट बुक्स वेरी केयरफुली, तो आप that will be very easy for you. Utilize the resource as well, including YouTube videos or lectures to seek assistance and try to locate different important structures. For example, brachial plexus हो गया and important muscles हो गए, ये सारे identify करने के लिए आपको बोला जाता है dissection में. तो that is very must on the body of cadaver before viva. Never forget to learn the origin and insertion of important muscles as mentioned by me. If viscerals are asked first, then start by demonstrating the anatomical position of viscera. अब होता क्या है कि different viscera अगर liver, kidney पूछे जा रहे हैं, तो first you have to demonstrate it. If you are demonstrating it, then first you have to mention about the anatomical position. उसके बाद ही किसी topic पे जाओ. If you are unable to locate a specific structure on the cadaver's body, don't stop or hesitate. Instead, focus on discussing the gross part. नहीं कर पा रहे हो तो don't stop. Keep on discussing the gross part. नहीं हो रहा है, at least examiner को ऐसा नहीं लगेगा that you do not know anything about the topic. At least उसे पता चलेगा कि हाँ बच्चा पढ़ के आया है. Your gross preparation will cover the remaining part. Your neuroanatomy preparation extends to covering viva question concerning the brain and spinal cord as well. हाँ, लेकिन इसके लिए YouTube lecture जरूर देख लेना, because neuroanat में भी brains और spinal cord, brains में specially locate करने के लिए बोलते हैं different structures. तो वाइवा से पहले प्लीज ये यूट्यूब के वीडियोस देख लेना. I'll share you the link. प्रॉफ रिलेटेड प्रिपरेशन टिप्स मेनली मुझे जो लगा है कि बहुत ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट होते हैं कि सबसे पहले begin your preparation as early as possible. मिनिमम 1 महीना रखो खुद के पास, जिससे आप प्रिपरेशन स्टार्ट करो और फिर रिविजन के लिए भी टाइम बच सके. Ensure you thoroughly cover and revise the entire syllabus before pre-prof examination, using the pre-prof as a practice paper for your actual exam. Analyze all the PYQs and organize your study material to avoid last minute cramming for revision. Why? Because last time में जब आप revision करते हो a day before examination, then you just mug up inside your head कि क्या क्या मैंने याद किया था ये वो. अगर study materials एक जगह concised होंगे आपके iPad या laptop में, that will be very easy for you to revise them. Work on improving your writing speed, as it will be beneficial on the day of examination when you get very limited time. As you know, 3 hours not sufficient for attempting all the questions perfectly. तो time तो कम होता है, but उसी में manage करना है ना. तो writing speed try करो enhance, लिखते लिखते वो enhance होगी. देन यहाँ पे मैंने इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस मेंशन कर रखे हैं. अब होता क्या है कि बच्चे जनरल एनाटॉमी को भूल जाते हैं, तो आई हैव मेंशन ऑल द इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस है. जनरल एनाटॉमी के हैं. देन अपर लिम्ब में मैंने लॉन्ग क्वेश्चंस को अलग फ्रेम कर रखा है, शॉर्ट क्वेश्चंस को अलग, एंड देन वी हैव इनॉमिनेशंस. एंड सिमिलर वे में लोअर लिम्ब इज देयर, एंड देन वी हैव हेड एंड नेक होगा. इसके बाद ये तो हो गया लोअर लिम्ब का इनॉमिनेशन. देन वी हैव हेड एंड नेक, इसमें भी लॉन्ग शॉर्ट एंड इनॉमिनेशन मैंने अलग से दे रखी है इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस. और फिर वी हैव थोरैक्स. थोरैक्स में ज्यादा कुछ पूछते नहीं है, तो इसीलिए मैंने कम ही टॉपिक्स रखे हैं, बिकॉज यू हैव टू कवर अ वास्ट सिलेबस नो. एब्डोमेन में मैंने टॉपिक्स यहाँ पे मेंशन कर दिए. न्यूरो एनाट भी इंक्लूडेड है, एम्ब्रियो इंक्लूडेड है, एंड एट लास्ट हिस्टोलॉजी के जो भी इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक्स हैं विच आर फ्रीक्वेंटली आस्क्ड इन योर मास्टर्स स्लाइड, वो मैंने यहाँ पे इंक्लूड कर रखा है. ये सारे टॉपिक्स पढ़ लो. पॉइंट ऑफ आइडेंटिफिकेशन दैट विल बी सफिशिएंट फॉर यू. So this was all about of my PPT. My best wishes for you, with you, for your prepare well for your pre-profs and profs. Thank you.
Thank you, Shagufta and Naman, for talking about anatomy. Now we have the last speaker for today, Kshitij Desai, who will continue with conclusion part of all these three subjects. And next up, we'll take the questions from students who have put in the comment box. Some questions have already been answered, I guess, by the speakers. But if there are some common questions that need to be taken care of, we'll take those questions in the last part of the presentation. Thank you. Now, Kshitij, are you ready with your PPT? Yeah, so you can continue.
Yeah, so hi guys, once again. So now that we've dealt with each exam one by one, I'll be summarizing what all the speakers have said and adding a bit more on how to deal with all three exams together. So the main thing is when to start preparing. So for me personally, I knew that before 1 month, like I do not get serious enough that I have to put in that effort yet, or I don't feel like it's that urgent, even though it is. But if you can do ahead of that before, great. But like other speakers have mentioned, ensure that you have at least 1 month for dedicated preparation. So stress on first, obviously you have to finish the topics that are essential to know. Only then can you try and building up your base and further points. So stress on the marking in previous year questions, and how much ever you're done, try doing it before 1 week. Because if there's 3 to 4 days left, then you have to stop whatever you're doing, even if it's not on target, even if it's not on schedule, because now's the time to focus on the exam that is upcoming itself. So yeah, and so how do you learn? Again, trust your learning style. You guys have developed a learning style yourself. So for me, the main method that I used to studying was making these revision notes, a photo which I put on the left. So I used to read a chapter and then write down every point that I found important on unruled sheet. But other people use different strategies. Like one of my friends whose photo I put on the right, she used to highlight the textbook and add these small post-it notes, so that even if she's revising quickly, she can still just read the post-it notes and the highlighted material and get a quick gist of what the chapter is. So trust yourself and trust the way it works. Now, how to figure out a schedule on how to study. So first is you have to figure out your reading pace on average, how much a chapter would take. And this differs for everyone. For example, I knew that physio might take more time for me as compared to biochem, even though the chapters might be of 10 pages each, because physio was a bit tougher for me. So figure out your reading pace and estimate that time accordingly. And to that time, you have to add breaks before and after. So there are people who work differently. Like what I used to do is study for an hour and then give myself a 15-minute break, but there are also different techniques. So there's something called the Pomodoro technique, which advocates for taking short bursts of studying of up to half an hour and then taking 5-minute breaks and then jumping right back into it. But I know friends who have also gone to the library and studied for 3 to 4 hours on end and then just not studied the rest of the day. So again, you have survived MBBS for 4 to 5 months, so you know yourself best. Next is, to this time you have to, like, suppose I say I think I can finish that chapter of physio in 1 hour. So I'm going to expect that it's actually in reality going to take me 1.5 hours, because I know that I'm not going to be able to be at peak productivity. I'm going to get stuck at a point, or I'm going to have to revise things over and over. So if you allot yourself that buffer time, that's the only way the schedule will be slightly realistic, because otherwise you're going to always have the pressure key yesterday's topics are missed or day before, and that's keep going to go, like, that's going to keep piling on, and that's going to be more trouble for you in the end. So these are some schedules that I use that worked for me personally. Again, this is all very highly personalized. So I used to divide these small topics and then assign it per day. And then again, in these, you can see there's a lot of cover up time. So give yourself that break and give yourself that time. So eventually, if someone studies continuously for hours, days on end, there's going to be two situations: burnout or boredom. So burnout means that you don't feel like studying, you're sitting at the book, but it's just not going in your head. So what I used to do for that is incorporate my friends and family. So if you're walking to someone, if you're walking with someone on the mess, like on the way to the mess, or if you just feel bored, then both of you can quiz each other. And there are great quizzing resources, like Quizwings itself has platforms to break that monotony, but there are YouTube videos, there's Telegram groups. So all of those are a great break. And as much as we try to put all-nighters, in a long term, that's not going to be realistic. So because for the first week, perhaps you'll have higher returns, but then because of so much accumulation of just tiredness, it's going to start deteriorating overall. So try to make it semi-healthy. Like, don't completely sacrifice your sleep schedule or eating schedule for the sake of the exams. Again, you come first and your health comes first. And again, give yourself that leeway, that break, that you're not going to be productive at all times, but as long as there's just some positive trend in general, and like someday might go bad, but if the week goes well, that's still a bonus. So don't be that strict or that harsh on yourself. So now, between exams, again, now that the exams, if the exam season has come, so again, no all-nighters, you have to sleep 3 to 4 hours, because I've had these happen to my friends who put so much more effort than me, but because they did not sleep the night before, during the exam, their mind just shuts down. So now I'm in a tentative schedule of, if I had 1 day study leave, how I would approach the exam. Approach my last minute revision for the exam. And again, this differs a lot for you. So what I knew is, like, I would start with something easy and give yourself first some time to sleep or some time to complain. Because when I come out of the exam for at least 1 hour, I know that I'm going to be in my mind is, ye question galat hua, like this went wrong, this went bad. How dare they give this type of paper? Like, I put in so much effort and nothing happened. Time nahi diya, this invigilator was rude. So give yourself that leeway, because if you try studying during that time, it's not going to end up happening. And then once you are recharged, or once you've got it out of your system, start with something that's generally a bit easier. That's what I like to do. And then I would jump into the major sections. So again, this is roughly of how I would do. And you can see that even here, I'm allotting myself a lot of cover up time, because I know that there is going to be like one time or an hour where I'm just going to be like, I don't want to study, or I've been studying too much and I don't feel like doing anything. So allot yourself that break. Now, how to write exam answers itself. Again, this has been covered in a very much detail and with so many great tips by the previous speakers. So again, a person on the left might have written more, but a person on the right is always going to get more marks. And yeah, so some general tips is to draw margins and clearly write the question number, because otherwise it's going to be harder for the examiner to circle around. And like speakers I mentioned, if you can go in serial order, that would be better, just because it's less of a headache for the examiner. Points is the only way it's going to work. No one has time to read a paragraph. A diagram or a table is going to be much more marks fetching. And underline or highlight the important keywords. And like everyone has stressed, a clinical correlation is of utmost importance. Now, time management, again, everyone has slightly different paper schedules. So if you have personalized tips from your seniors or from your own experience or looking at the previous year questions, do like trust those more. So what I like to do is, I would like, once I get the paper, I would take a minute to read through every question. And then I would allot myself like, okay, I'm giving half an hour for these 2 questions and like 45 minutes for all the short answers or something. Because like so many speakers I mentioned, if you write an answer well, you're only giving 1 to 2 marks extra to yourself. But if you leave an answer, that's like 3-4 marks automatically gone. So your first aim is to attempt all questions to an acceptable degree, and then only try to flesh it out more or try to give it more of that higher caliber points. leave some space after the answers, because if you recollect anything later, you can put that on, and do the questions you know well first, because that's going to first, it's going to build your confidence and be like, okay, I know something, I'm not absolutely gone. And also the exam, that's your first impression for the examiner, so that's what they are going to leave. Like, that's the impression you make the most. And do try to keep 15 to 20 or 30 minutes for checking, but again, if you need to dive into that time to finish the papers, finishing the paper is of a higher priority. So now practicals or Viva. So the night before, you're only going to do what I used to do is only do what I know is for sure going to be asked. So principles, standard values, the instrument names, and for ANAT, like the ANAT speakers have mentioned, the positions, the presenting parts. Because if you don't know those, your Viva is not going to go much further into higher levels of theory. The day off, again, have breakfast and keep yourself well groomed neat, because more than everyone's going to, like most colleges, everyone passes, no one's going to hold back unless, because everyone has studied to a certain extent. But what sets your actual impression on the examiner much more than how you're answering is how you enter, because they want to see that humility that you have as a first year MBBS student. So have to keep informals, clean coat, like hair groomed, ID card, like that's something that's going to immediately set the tone of your vibe. Because if you, even if you know everything, if you give the examiner the opinion that you're cocky or you're, you know, like that rebel type, they're not going to like you, and immediately your scope for making a good impression is so much lower. So while answering, besides the tips they have given, the other speakers have given, answer confidently. And one way to build up this confidence is, again, practicing with your friends, because after practicing with your friends, or like, you know that you're able to recollect it on the spot and you don't have that fear in you, which is the biggest obstacle for a viva. And never argue with your professor. The second you do that, your viva is going downhill. So whatever they're saying, even if it's against everything you've learned, just say okay or like sorry. Now try to direct your answer. So if you have to give a wrong answer, give one that you're confident in. So this happened to me in my ANAT profs itself, where I didn't know the artery the professor was asking, but I only knew one artery in the head and neck, and I knew that well. So I, even if I don't know that, I'm still going to guess that artery, because the next question that the professor is going to, like maxillary artery, the next question the professor will ask is, okay, tell me about the maxillary and why do you think it is this. So even if I cannot score full because I got the answer wrong, at the end of the day, I still proved to the examiner that, okay, this child knows something, which is at the end of the day what the examiner knows. And also, don't be too over energetic to answer, because what you often do is, like, if someone asks you in like biochem, explain this pathway, and you're like, okay, I'm saying step one, and if step one goes wrong, this disease happens. If you automatically offer up that information, you're stealing like a question from examiner. So instead, if you could like try to answer to the point exactly what the examiner is asking. And like I mentioned, showing up neat and clean means that half the battle is done and you're mostly going to pass. So thank you guys for listening. And again, don't worry, you guys have put a lot of effort and will continue to do so. And if you have any doubts or any other clarifications, I'm sure that the entire, myself and the entire Quiz Wings team and all of the other speakers will be more than glad that to help you out. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Desai, again. One interesting question we had in the comment box now was to talk about the flowchart. People are saying that they do not exactly know what to put in the flowcharts, and hence they keep on repeating what they had already written. So I think it is more of a physiology and biochemistry concern. So you, Desai, and Mangalam, or maybe Rahul Vardhan, you could take up the question, whoever is interested to. Or maybe I should ask Rahul Vardhan, you could take up this question if you are here. Kshitij, I think you should take this query about flowcharts.
Okay, yeah. So with flowcharts, I feel like first the main thing is, if you know the flowchart from a trusted source such as like Gaitan or Jigipal, if you know it in toto, put that out. And a lot of people, if you have time, and but it, okay, so don't try repeating the points to that much excess, because in the flowchart, what I like to do is I would just put the heading. Oh, sorry. I would just put the heading of the flowchart. So, say for example, neuromuscular junction. You know this if you know something in a lot more detail. So, if you just write that the vesicles go, then in detail later on you can explain. Or another thing, like other speakers have mentioned, is integrate those points into the flowchart. So, what I would do is, like, if you're writing one over there, then you can just put like an asterisk or write to the side of it an extra point, so that already reinforces that you know something other than a flowchart. And again, like Mangalam has also mentioned in the chat, in the flowchart they're only looking for the headings or the brief points itself. And when, if you want to add information to that, you can either add it to the side, but don't, because it's not just the heading, you can go into so much more detail. And I also feel like other speakers have mentioned, a diagram and a flowchart combo, if you do that, it explains something, it explains the concept to that great of a caliber that you might not need to add an explanation, and if, or you can save that time better to answer another answer better. So I hope that answers your question to a certain extent. Yeah.
Yeah, about flowcharts, the thing is that it makes the answer more legible for the examiner. And also, when you are studying, for example, physiology or maybe biochemistry, if you try to study and write the format of the answer in the flowchart form at the time of studying only, जब आप लोग पढ़ रहे हैं उस वक्त ही you can just make your notes flowcharts के form में, ताकि वो एग्जाम में you could replicate अच्छे से. And if I am an examiner, and I'm checking your copy and I get like a full page with all the text filled, I would not like to read it अच्छे से. But if I get an answer well structured with spaces in between, flowchart, what it does, it gives the major points and also the sequence of points in a very very good way, and also it gives the answer a proper spacing pattern, so it is very legible for the examiner. So for flowcharts, as Desai also told, you can proceed. And the next question I had in the comment box was, however, how much you write in the exam, you cannot get above 70 or 80. Well, this is a case with almost all the medical colleges in India. Like even if you write an almost perfect answer, you would feel that you have written an almost perfect answer. But if you go deeper into the topic, you would know that there could have been many more things that you could have written for that answer. But again, since it's like a 2.5 or 3 hours exam or 2 hour exam, depending upon its terminal or the prof or pre-prof, you cannot write everything, obviously. So this is the thing that is focused upon by the people and the teachers who check the answers, that you cannot be perfect, and hence we are not going to give you more than 7 or 8 out of 10 in a 10 marker question, and maybe more than 3.5 in a 5 marker question. So do not try to be just perfect in your answer. Like try to touch all the points, and also like you'll have to manage your timing, and also go through all the questions and attempt them. Do not leave a question. Even if you do not know anything about a question, just try to write it. If you have a 5 marker and you're leaving it, you will get a 0. But if you have a 10 marker and you add an extra page to it, you can get maybe a 7.5 instead of a 6.5. So leaving one question would cost you more than answering one question better. These things in mind, and also keep your answers prepared beforehand. Try to focus more on diagrams and flowcharts for biochemistry and physiology, diagrams for anatomy. And I guess we do not have any other question currently. If anyone is having any query, he or she can raise their hand. We could have them speak up, and then the question could be answered by the speakers who have talked about the subjects today. Yeah, so Manish is saying they never give us a 10 on 10. Yeah, you would never almost never you get a 10 on 10, even if you have written 100%, because you cannot write a 100% in an exam of 3 hours. Okay, if you have a long question on pancreas for anatomy, if you keep writing on pancreas, you would never end your exam. Like you can have your exam ended. You can complete the 3 hours and you would have more points to mention still after that. So that is the main thing professors talk about, that you cannot be perfect and you should lose the like hope of getting a 10 or 10. So better be very realistic and try like snatching a 7 maybe or 6.5 maybe. That would help. So try writing answers in such a way that you could attend to all the questions and get a good gettable mark in the answer you have written. Any other queries? People can raise their hands, I think. So I guess we are done with the presentation. We had 2 hour webinar, and thank you to all the speakers who have talked upon, starting from biochemistry to physiology to the anatomy part, and to all the 2023 batch people. You are, I think, just 2 to 3 months into your first year, and it is a hard time to get accommodated, like with the syllabus and the MBBS part. And gradually, as you move you'll have more experience, and experience would also teach you. But try being in touch with people who know better than you. Those are your seniors, and also like if your faculties or SRs or JRs are approachable, you could talk to them also. Study regularly. That is one thing I, from my personal POV, would try to suggest you that if you study even like half an hour or 1 hour in non-exam times, you would not have to stress so much. You'll obviously have to study rigorously during exam times, but you would know that I have studied previously and would have things to write in the exams. So you'd not stress more, and hence you'd have better performance in the exams. So I guess we'll just end the webinar here to mention. All the presentations, all the slides that have been talked upon by the speakers, those would be shared in your quizzings group. So you can check on the slides after the PPT, like after the PPTs are shared. And also, this session is being recorded and we'll publish it on YouTube, and we'll get an YouTube video link of the session very soon on your respective Telegram and WhatsApp groups. So for people who have missed a part, or for people who could not attend the webinar, you could just watch through those uh, like parts, and also like complete the video. I think we are done with all the guidance part for first year, and we'll just end with the webinar. Thank you everyone for connecting. And I'll just mention the speakers once again for their time and support they have provided today. For anatomy, we had 2 speakers from IGIMS Patna. First one was Naman Bhaskar, and the second was Shagufta Naaz. For biochemistry, we had Kumar Mangalam from AIIMS Patna and Rahul Vardhan from PMCH. And for physiology, we had Shaurya Anand from IGIMS 22 batch, and Kshitij Desai. And Kshitij Desai is from AIIMS Patna 2022 batch, who also presented the conclusion part of the webinar today for all the students. So I think we'll take a leave. Thank you everyone for connecting, and thank you for the speakers also.